Hello BookTube! Welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth and this is my very belated wrap-up for BookTubeAthon 2016. Because I had family in town for the first half of BookTubeAthon, I wasn't able to do as much as I would have otherwise with the BookTubeAthon challenges. I only got to do one of the video challenges, but I did read something that met each of the challenges. I finished 4 books and I read part of 3 more for the challenge to read 7 books. So I did make progress in the books and I did finish the books by the end of the month. So I still consider my BookTubeAthon a success this year. So let me show you what I read. For the challenge to read a book that has yellow on the cover and also to read a book that is older than you, I picked Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This particular book also includes Through the Looking Glass, which I am currently reading right now, and I did not read it during BookTubeAthon, but I did read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. This was my first time reading the book. Of course, I've seen the Disney movie adaptation many times, and I discovered that the Disney movie is really a mashup of both of these books because some of the characters are in Through the Looking Glass that are not in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and in the movie they're there. I think I've heard people talk about that before. For instance, Tweedledee and Tweedledum are in Through the Looking Glass, but they are not in the first book. And I also discovered that while the majority of the characters that are featured in the movie are in the books, the dialogue between them and Alice is quite different in the book. It's very nonsensical, very whimsical. I had a lot of fun reading it. I'm having fun reading Through the Looking Glass, and I am so glad that I finally got around to reading these books. This book was actually printed in 1946. So not only is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland older than me, like 100 years older than me, this actual book was printed about 18 years before I was born. So I was excited to be able to meet 2 challenges with this one book. This little tiny book is what met my challenge to read a book only after sunset. It's called On Your Marks, A Package of Punctuation by Richard Armour. And this is a little poetry book about various punctuation marks. I love words and editing and things like that, and I'm pretty good with how to use most punctuation marks. However, I was really hoping to learn a little bit more about this one, the semicolon. I've never really understood when to use a semicolon, and unfortunately this poem was not very helpful. A lot of the other poems were very informative about how to use each of the punctuation marks, but this one disappointed me, and that's the one I most needed to know about. So anyway, it was a fun little book. It was basically a poem about each punctuation mark, and I enjoyed it. Another book I enjoyed was this one, I Could Pee on This and Other Poems by Cats, by Francesco Marciuliano. I learned about this on BookTube from Trina from Between Chapters. She did the title poem from this book last year during BookTubeAthon for her book scene reenactment, and it was hilarious. I really enjoyed the poems, some more than others. There were a couple of poems that I didn't particularly care for, but I did enjoy the majority of them, and I would definitely recommend this for cat lovers. And then the last book that I finished during BookTubeAthon is The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Ann Brashares. I had actually started this a little bit before BookTubeAthon, but I had not gotten very far in it because I was busy getting ready for my family to arrive. So I was excited to finally get this finished. I had hoped to participate more in the Pantsalong, but unfortunately this is the only book I got read in this series during the month of July. So the rest of them I have behind me, and I hope to get to them someday, but I don't know when. So I'm able to count this for BookTubeAthon because this has a movie adaptation, which my daughter Katie and I watched during the week, and we really enjoyed it. Of course, I enjoyed the book better than the movie because it does go a little more in depth with the characters and what's going on. And I tell you, I didn't expect to get emotionally invested in the characters as much as I did for a YA book. But of course, you know, some of them made life choices that I wouldn't have made for myself. But I thought it was really good character study of these 4 girls who are all very different and yet all best friends. And I did enjoy following each of them through their summer. And if you're not familiar with the story, it's about 4 girls who have been best friends all their lives, and this is their first summer that they're all going to be spending the summer in a different location around the world. And so one of them finds a pair of jeans at a thrift store, and magically they can all fit into the jeans, and they're all different sizes and body types. So they decide that the jeans are magic and they are going to trade them around all summer and let each girl have a week at a time with the jeans and see what happens. So that's basically the premise of the story. It's a lot of fun, and I am glad that I read it, and I am looking forward to continuing with the series at some point. The challenge that I didn't meet with any of my completed books was to read a book written by one of your favorite authors. Well, Maggie Sefton is one of my favorite authors of cozy mysteries, so I picked the next one in this series called Dropped Dead Stitch. Now, I actually first picked it up for the hashtag Save Our Cozies Readathon, which was a couple of days before BookTubeAthon started, and I was only able to read just a little bit of it during that readathon. So I continued and read this during BookTubeAthon, and I did not quite finish it until a couple of days after BookTubeAthon was over, but that's okay. I enjoyed the book. I had not read a book from the series in quite a while, probably a couple of years, and if you're interested in hearing more about this book, I did talk about it more in my Save Our Cozies Readathon wrap-up. Another book I was listening to on audio in my car is Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper. This is a middle grade book, and it's book 1 in the Dark is Rising sequence. There's a book farther on down in the series that is a Newbery winner, which I've tried reading before and didn't really understand what was going on. Since my goal is to read all Newbery winners, and I couldn't really understand that one unless I read the earlier books in the series, I have started now from the beginning and picked up the first of the series. I really enjoyed it. It's about 3 siblings who go on holiday to visit their great uncle. They find a mysterious manuscript which gives them clues to a grail, and they discover that there are some evil forces at work which are trying to get to this grail before they do. And there are also ties to Arthurian legends and Merlin in the story. And so I am really excited to continue with this series. Now, I didn't get very far in it because I was listening to it in my car, and I really wasn't in my car a lot during that week. And when I was in my car, I usually had my sister or another family member, and it was just not possible to turn it on and listen to it. So I did make a little bit of progress in it during the week, and then I finished it before the end of the month. And then continuing on with the challenge to read 7 books, I also made some progress in The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I did finish this before the end of the month. I was trying to get this read before book club, which happened during BookTubeAthon, and I didn't get it finished, but I went ahead and went, and miraculously I wasn't really spoiled for the ending of the book. I kind of listened to the discussion, and who I thought they said was the killer really wasn't the killer. So I was surprised when I got to the end of the book. And this was one that I was really glad I had the print book. I listened to the majority of it on audio, but if you've read this book, you know that it doesn't follow a linear timeline. The timeline bounces back and forth. And the other thing, I started this on audio. I listened to about 2.5 discs before I ever opened up the print book, and I was getting really confused, and it finally dawned on me that there was more than one girl. I thought it was just one girl, and so I kept hearing these things that were contradictory, and I could not understand what was going on. So I finally looked in the book and realized that there was actually 3 girls. Now, where I was at that point, I had only heard from 2 of the girls. We hear from the 3rd girl right after that, but I had to just go back and start from the beginning. I read a little bit of it in print, and I kind of followed along as I was listening, and I finally understood and had a grasp on the characters and how they all fit in and how they all fit in together. So I highly recommend picking up the print book for this in addition to the audio until you get a handle on who's who and get a feel for the timeline. And just know that you're going to have to pay attention when the chapters change, because it will go back and forth in time. Now, as far as my enjoyment of the book, I think I gave it 3 stars. It's really not my kind of book. There was some foul language, and the whole thriller thing is not really my favorite kind of book. When I'm going to read mysteries, I really prefer cozies, but it wasn't bad. I haven't read a lot of thrillers, but really it was only thrilling right at the end. There was some mystery involved, leading up to that, but in the beginning, not only was I confused, I was just a little bit put off. We hear from 3 different women's perspectives, and it seemed like in the beginning they were all just kind of complaining about how miserable their life was, and that's not really what I enjoy hearing about either. So the thriller part, which is at the end, and finally coming around to who the killer was and everything that happened at the end, that's really where the thriller part came in, was right at the end. I thought really some of the beginning of the book was kind of depressing. Alright, so here's everything I finished for BookTubeAthon, and here's everything that I made progress in for BookTubeAthon, including the movie, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and I had a great time during BookTubeAthon, especially when my family was here. Even though we weren't doing a lot of reading, we really had a great time with their visit, and you may have already seen the video that my sister and I did on some of our old lady book recommendations. So now I'm catching up with my videos, and so I wanted to show you what I read for BookTubeAthon. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.